Even though I was convinced of the voluntarist position for years, the whole thing was a mixed bag for me. Now, I liked being logically consistent in my ideology, so this new philosophy appealed to me on those grounds. On the other hand, it was difficult for me to answer questions about the implementations of a stateless society and its day-to-day functioning. Now, some voluntarists act as if this isn't a problem at all. They even poo-poo or mock the need to work out the practical nuts and bolts of the whole thing to alleviate all the who will build the roads concerns. These people prefer to merely lay out the moral argument against government authority, which is fairly easy, and then assume a stance of people will come up with something when the time comes. Voluntarists assume everything will function based on free market principles, with the work of government outsourced to what we now call the private sector. The emergent competition fostered by an unimpeded free market will give us a wealth of options at our disposal, the reasoning goes. And I can see how it would. We'd have competing private security agencies in the place of police departments. We'd have private firefighting services, private courts too. Unlike government-run institutions, they'd have to perform well and maintain the public trust, or perish along with other failed enterprises. Sounds good so far. But I say voluntarists should better address the thorny questions about how the thing might work rather than retreating into the position of just arguing against the concept of government. For example, we have a man who commits a murder. What does the voluntarist society do with him? You can put him on trial in one of the private courts, but what if he refuses to accept the verdict and the sentence? What if he refuses to go on trial in the first place? I heard one prominent exponent of voluntarism suggest that the victim's family can kill the perpetrator if he wishes. Yeah, what could go wrong with that? There's also talk of depriving the man of things like utility services, housing, and other necessities, making normal life impossible for him. But even if that happens, even if everyone cooperates, which is a big if, is it really justice to shut off the guy's electricity and water after he's convicted of murdering somebody? What if he's a crafty survivor and finds a way to stay on the lam? And even if people were to apprehend him by force and take him to a jail, how does jail even work? Who's paying for the prisons? If we can't get an explanation of how something this basic and this important would likely work in practice, how can anyone expect us to take the whole program seriously? And there are many other issues that seem very difficult to solve in a society with no final arbiter. I've yet to hear cogent explanations of how we might handle many other important issues, like pollution. What's to stop the guy who wants to dump poison in a river? Social pressure won't do. The effects of that would take far too long. Sending a mob with pitchforks and torches is an option, I guess, but the polluter may be rich enough to afford a powerful security force that would neutralize this threat. What do we do? I have yet to hear a convincing explanation. Then there's child abuse. Even Murray Rothbard said that there's nothing in a voluntarist society that can stop parents from, say, starving their children. And what about protection against a large-scale military attack from another country? While a militia might have some effectiveness in repelling invaders in small numbers, it certainly wouldn't stand up to weapons of mass destruction. We'd be pretty helpless, I'm afraid. Now, animal cruelty is another issue. Maybe not a big issue to some people, but it is to me. In a voluntarist society, nothing would preclude a man from starving his pets or abusing them in some other terrible ways. What could you do about it? In a voluntary society, probably very little. Furthermore, no one, to my knowledge, has really outlined how the poor will gain access to such things as police protection or fire departments or private roads. Charities would still exist, that seems certain. But making people depend on charity to keep their homes from burning down doesn't sound like an ideal society to me. Now, maybe I just haven't heard the good arguments on these matters, and I admit that. Maybe they're out there. But until somebody provides better explanations that I can understand of how this is all likely to work, I guess I remain a minimal state libertarian, no longer a voluntarist.